Have you ever wondered how bad a player experience has to be for someone to swear off being a player forever? Well, gather around and take a comfy sit next to our campfire because I'm going to do what I'm good at. I'm going to tell a story. Think about it. It's 2018, sometime in August. I was up late talking to an old friend of mine and expressing my love for D&D, as I had just finished watching the latest episode of Critical Role and I was hyped up. This was 5 years ago, so Campaign 2 had just recently started earlier that year, if I'm not wrong, and I was enthralled in the hobby as I had ever been. Then this very same friend of mine recommended that I come and try to play with them and their friends, and of course I said yes, and started thinking about my character almost immediately. Before this, I had ran D&D games for my close friends, and that was pretty much about it. Lots of theater of the mind and a very simple board bought from Target with lines drawn across it and some old minis I managed to find hanging out. I had never been an actual player before and was looking forward to actually getting an opportunity to be on the other side of the DM screen. And with that, I was invited to their Discord, and their friend, who is the DM, she started talking to me about the character I was going to be playing, and I tried to keep it relatively simple. I wanted things to be as easy as possible on this DM because though I had just only DM for my friends, I understand how much responsibility that goes into being a dungeon master in the first place and how much time and effort it takes. So I tried to be as non-problematic in my character as I possibly could have been. After some talks and backstory discussions, my arriving session was set, and all I had to do was wait. And so I did. I waited in anticipation until the fateful night was to arrive. I was told beforehand that this table there were a total of 6 players, now 7 with my inclusion, but they shared something odd to me, my friend. That about half of the players at the table don't really roleplay or interact with the game in any meaningful way. Her hope was that with our 2 very charismatic characters, we'd be able to engage with the rest of the table and get them as invested in the game as she is. And so, the session begins. My character is trapped somewhere in a closet. It is what it is. Sometimes you meet in a tavern, sometimes you're just a captive. You know, it happens. I know that this is a little cliche, but we take those. I end up waiting for them to go through combat, which takes about half the session-ish, not a big deal. And it doesn't really bother me too much because I would much rather them just have continued their narrative and just include whenever it's the best time to. I was really in no rush. And also, as a note, if you're a player entering into an already established experience, it's not good to expect to be shunted into the limelight immediately. Your character is coming in after the story has already began. The story has already taken a life of its own, and you're kind of just hopping on that train for the journey. But anyways, back to my story. I was pretty understanding after the DM apologized to me. She was very much like, "Oh, I wish I could get you in sooner." It's like, it's okay, it's fine. And for the most part, during this time, I was wondering as to how I could engage with those silent players, because I was seeing a type of playstyle that I'm gonna use very strong words here, but I personally detest. I dislike the idea of quote unquote the group leader style of play, wherein basically you have one person making all major decisions that a party or group does within a D&D game. I don't like this in particular because I feel like it takes agency over the narrative from people and only puts it in the hands of a couple of individuals within a given party. And it's in effect 2 people making all of the choices for the other 4 remaining people in this particular party. And they're expected to just sort of fall in line. I find this playstyle personally to be pretty toxic and a little dumb. I will absolutely go on a rant about how dumb it is in a future video, but for now, we're gonna keep this discussion, this talk on track here. And as we explore this mixture of a castle kind of glued into an icy cavern, they eventually find my character and they free me from the closet inside of this miraculous floating castle. I arrive into the scene with a full voice for my character and mannerisms and personality and the whole 9 yards, which I don't think they were expecting me to be so energetic. They were completely caught off guard by it. A couple of people liked it, and 2 people completely ignored it, and those 2 people will be the same 2 people that say the most infamous line to me that I have ever heard, ever. And so, they untie my character, and they look over to me, and the first word they say to me is, "Can you heal?" When I heard those words, I realized they were just looking for someone to sit back and make their hit points go up as their hit points go down. I realized that I was a heal bot. And, looking back on it in greater insight, I realized that my divine sorcerer Aasimar, first character, was effectively a sidekick with no real importance to anything, and was just hammered down into the function that is effectively a healer and nothing else. He was nothing else other than that. Story did matter, character did matter, it did matter. What he could do mattered the most, and that was a little discouraging, but I pressed on, role-playing with everyone in the game and even getting to know the more silent players, actually making it my mission to get to know the silent players, because, I think that it's a really good habit to engage people and players within a game that aren't as loud and outspoken as others. It's good to get them talking and get them a part of the game and get them engaged. And, a couple of jokes later, they're laughing along with me, and the players who didn't really talk at the beginning were kind of almost ignoring my character, were basically straight-facing all of my jokes to the best of their ability. But for the most part, everyone was having conversations in character, and everything was going great. Or so I thought. The 2 players that were effectively the self-appointed team leaders didn't like that I was engaging the other players in ways that they couldn't control, asking them questions about their characters and showing a general interest in their backstories, which I'm sure they worked very hard on. People do. These same backstories that were being completely ignored in favor of the 2 individuals, quote unquote, that wanted basically to have control over the entire game and its story elements. We continued the session and happened upon this ice cave as we traveled deeper into the caverns beneath the castle, and these players were currently running Storm King's Thunder. And I had never heard of it. I didn't know anything about it, so it was kind of new to me. It's kind of interesting. But they had been struggling to complete it because of the vice group that the other 2 individuals had on the entire table, because when there was a blockade of decision making, they were the only 2 that they allowed to really make any decisions to change anything, and everyone else was just ignored. It was honestly quite awful. And the DM of this table, she didn't know or understand why the other players weren't as engaged. Looking back on it, she probably just didn't see or realize what was happening in her game and how the sort of social dynamic was fostering, because one of the 2 individuals, one of the bozos, was her fiance, and she probably just didn't see it, and giving them the benefit of the doubt, at the time giving her the benefit of the doubt, which will later be taken away in this story because of events soon to transpire. As our party walks about these icy caves underneath this floating castle thing, eventually there's this giant cave that we find, and the DM describes the setting as there being some gold coins that are locked in the ice that trail off into the caves beyond, where there's nothing but complete darkness and shadow, or something like that. My character looks at the coins on the ground, and by the way, my character had a nice 18 charisma, 8 intelligence, okay? He was not the smartest guy in the barn, So he looks at the coins and he looks at his empty coin purse and goes, well, my coin purse is feeling a little light, so I think I should go inside and have myself a gander. So he turns himself invisible and starts walking inside. The rest of the group sits back and just watches what happens. Above table, I kind of had an idea as to what this was. This was a white dragon. But I also understood that my character's going to make whatever decisions that they're going to make. And he doesn't know that this is an ice dragon. He doesn't even have an idea of what an ice dragon could even be. He's never known about them. 8 intelligence. And also, he just was dumb. So I knew exactly what it was, but for the sake of never metagaming, I let the curious lights within my character's eyes shine as bright as ever and walk into the mysterious cave invisible. This is where the issues begin. The 2 problem players that I was talking about started metagaming and arguing with the DM, and they argued that dragons have true sight, which, by the way, is false. But the DM, instead of wanting to just argue with them, decided like, okay, it has true sight, whatever. We're moving on. I'm not going to take up any more time on this. And so the dragon descended upon my character. And they had a nice chat. They roleplayed. The more silent players at this point were fully locked into the scene, and the person who was playing a wizard decided to actually join in on the fun. So he came onto the scene and basically roleplayed with my Himbo Asamar sorcerer character, and with his general lack of understanding of social cues, and this wizard who was pretty much the exact opposite. And we had this really awesome sort of dual roleplay moment where we're trying to talk to this ancient white dragon to get it to go up and help us kill the giants that are up there, and after they help us kill it, we can leave the castle to them. And for the most part, everyone really liked it. The DM was having a good time, the other players were having a really good time, everyone was really engaged and was having fun. So I thought. You see, while everyone was having fun behind the scenes, the 2 main characters of the party were having a complete meltdown because my character made a decision for themselves that was relatively harmless and resulted in more narrative avenues being opened up for the group, as my choice directly brought in a way for them to finish their adventure module, which the DM expressed they'd been looking for, and something that they've been struggling to do for themselves for quite some time. Everyone laughed, of course, and except for them, and another person at this table and group who was the secret final boss this entire time. This player effectively would later go on to emotionally blackmail their friends into a me versus him situation, as in remove me from the game or else they're going to leave, which I will talk more about that later. After a word of advice, if there's ever anyone in your life that will basically hold your entire friend group hostage over something as trivial as a D&D game, drop them. Cut them out of your life, out of your friend group, whatever, and notice the health of your general group improve over time, because people like this honestly aren't worth your time, effort, or energy, as they will always try to find some way to make the situation about them, even though it had nothing to do with them in the first place. And they will try to find ways to strong arm you into making decisions that you may not want to make via using their participation as a way to do so. Okay, with that out of the way, there were 3 people now absolutely tweaking over the fact that someone in their D&D game showed an ounce of independence. The DM not knowing how to handle the situation ended the game early right then and there. At this point, the game had gone for about 2.5 hours, and there was only about 45 minutes of which that I was actually a part of. My 45-minute inclusion nearly caused the situation to go nuclear because I was trying to involve more people in a D&D game that I'm sure that they really enjoyed, but it slowly got killed and sapped by these 3 really awful players. However, with these 3 toxic, problematic players that have been plaguing their experience for literal months at a time, we're going to get into the part of how the DM handled the situation outside of the game itself. And this is a part of why this is the worst session ever. So the weirdest part about all of this is that the DM of this game, she quite literally supported every decision I had made, talking to the dragon, interacting with the other players. She was on board for everything that happened, and she was very excited at the end of the game. However, due to the 3 problem players in this particular D&D group getting up in arms in protest and DMing her rapid fire messages, 20 messages in a night, she decides to treat me as if I'm the issue or a problem. At this point, I was being as nice as I possibly could to the others in the Discord server, despite them literally calling my character a jester-like or a jester clone, even though that wasn't even remotely the case. Anyways, she decides the best decision is to try and berate me in DMs. And then I just bring up the simple thing that could have probably have helped the situation from the very start. Something I had been holding on to because I was just letting the DM do their own thing. I didn't want to overstep. I told her, hey, dragons don't actually have true sight at all. So if we were to go back in time, that dragon wouldn't have even have known I was there in the first place. That scene wouldn't have happened. Is it my fault for going along with misinformation, or yours for not informing yourself first and foremost before moving forward with the scene? Their current frustration is founded upon the misinformation that they have and the metagame that they engaged in. So why am I the individual that's being berated and catching any heat for doing and making decisions that you supported me in doing? Silence. I received nothing. I sent that message to the tune of complete silence for a couple of days even. I heard from my friend that she had read my message, understood it, and understood what it had to say. However, the 3 problem players were sending her so many complaints to a point to where they had almost complete control over the D&D game. And were personally insulting my character and at every turn, and even insulting me as a person. So she decides the best course of action is to take the side of the people who are literally bullying me, who are literally just sitting there insulting me to my virtual face. And that's that. Or was it? You see, after being harassed for an entire night in Discord, having my character be completely crapped on for him just existing in the game that they were in, for being independent, I guess, the DM decides to remove me. I didn't say anything that would be an insult to any of them. I was trying to be as nice as possible, and I was the person who got removed. And this was a wake-up call for me. It made me realize that this wasn't an environment I wanted to be in anyways. These were really toxic people, and from what I learned after this, the other players that were there, more quiet ones, decided to also leave after seeing this outburst because they realized that the experience that they were getting was controlled by these toxic individuals that wanted to basically make them side characters. This was a big learning experience for me, as it made me realize I never want for someone else to feel the way that I felt for simply trying to enjoy D&D in a harmless way that brought people together, that was in an attempt to make people laugh and have a good time. My basis for what a D&D game should be was based on what that experience shouldn't be, i.e. what I had gone through. And at the time, my main thing, the main game I looked up to was Critical Role. And my main takeaway from that was not the Matt Mercer effect, that everyone should go into character and have a voice, but that everyone should be able to sit around a table and experience the feeling of having fun with someone, to experience having their reality melt away and embody a character that isn't them, and experience a collaborative narrative with people that they enjoy being around. I never once thought that every DM should be like Matt Mercer, but at the very least, that every DM should try to facilitate a fun, safe environment that allows people to freely express themselves. At the end of the day, I'm sure this DM, she tried her best, but she is also a part of the problem, as she almost encouraged this cycle of toxicity within her own table and allowed it to basically run rampant and ultimately drive people away. I later learned 6 months later that they never even finished their adventure module, that the players that left just never came back, even after people tried to play with them to do so, because of that one night. And who would blame them? Who wants to be a part of a table where there are 2 or 3 main characters and the following 4 people are just afterthoughts, who are just functions and what they can do and provide these other 3 individuals? Who would ever want to be a part of that experience? And furthermore, who would want to play under a dungeon master who would so readily allow it to happen in the first place? So, admittedly, after this experience, I was a little upset. I was hurt, and it was a huge blow to me that I couldn't even experience the fun of being a player. But with all these realizations hitting me, I asked myself that, and this is a statement that will probably fill you in on the person I used to be. I told myself, I should do what they do for fun, but get paid to do it instead. I wanted to be so good at being a DM that the experiences I provided would completely overwrite and overshadow the bad experience that I had tenfold. And anytime I DM now, in the early days, I used to have that in the back of my head. Don't be like this DM. Don't allow for this type of situation to ever happen to anyone in your setting ever again. And that was the birth of my want to be a professional dungeon master. And I really wanted to succeed in doing it too. So I messaged my friend that I had played with after doing my research and told her about what I think I wanted to do, and she supported me. She offered help and helped me write the structure for certain ad pages because they were an editor, and basically I leapt into it full sail and did my first ever paid adventure, which was Waterdeep Dragon Heist. Before I knew it, I had walked into this being a quote-unquote pro DM. After 2 months, I was running 3 games a week. After 4 months, I was running 6 to 8 games a week, and it's essentially been that way ever since. I also gained a nice little community as well, and we did our first ever community meetup in 2023, where everyone did each other's makeup, helped people get into armor, and cosplay together. And ironically, it felt like a canon event, like it was something I was meant to experience in my lifetime. Just like my first experience as a player. Because without that D&D game to show me what a D&D game is not supposed to look like, I would have never have been so strong in forging a vision of what it should look like. I was able to forge experiences I'm proud of and stories that people will never forget. It's funny how the most beautiful things in life are born out of the ugliest moments. And that is in effect my DM Canon event. Hope you all enjoyed listening along to my first ever very painful player experience. But now I get to tell you how far I've come along. I'm still a pro DM. I've amassed over 9,000 hours of experience now and over 1,500 run and complete D&D sessions under my belt. With a world I've been writing for over the past 5 years, I have 40 subclasses, hundreds of spells, dozens of feats, which all those encompassing the themes of my world and campaigns, from sword magic to blood magic to magic that kills you so you can use undead spells. There's a lot going on, and I'm excited to be able to talk about all my neat things with you guys. If you'd like to be a part of my journey here as a content creator, please subscribe. It'd be cool if you did, and I'd really appreciate it. Like the video if you enjoyed my story time and the art, and comment about some of your stories. I'd love to hear about them. Oh, and that neat little community I was talking about, feel free to join it. The Discord link will be in the description down below, and if you'd like to support me, you can go take a peek over at my Patreon, or if you want to support me and be a part as what has been described as some of the best character-driven narrative storytelling on the internet, you can join the aforementioned Discord, where you, my friend, can be a part of one of the narratives yourself. And with that, I'll be seeing you guys in the next one.